How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Crafting Cars. This is part 8 of the Hurricane NSX build, and today's a pretty exciting one. We are going to be starting wiring on this chassis, and we're going to be creating our first motorsport level sub harness, and we're going to be beginning on the rear of the vehicle. We're going to be doing the rear lighting system. I'm talking the LED third brake light, turn signals, driving lights, brake lights, reverse lights, and license plates lights. Now, I'll be creating these sub harnesses all throughout the vehicle. Like I said, we'll have the rear end, each of the doors, the front end, AC system, ABS system, all that good stuff. And once we're all done with those sub harnesses, we'll connect them all with a main harness. Now, the way I'm going to be wiring this chassis is technically club level, or kind of like basic motorsport level, and we'll be using Deutsch Connectors throughout the whole build. This has become industry standard, especially on race car builds like this. Now, I've got all my materials laid out on the table. This is actually the table out of my 2nd gen CRV. These come stock in the trunk area of those cars. Can't use the bench today because it is covered in C30 engine parts. We'll probably talk about that towards the end of the video. Before we start crafting our new rear sub harness, we got to get the old harness out of the trunk. Now, lucky for us, most of this rear harness doesn't actually have any saltwater damage, so we'll be able to kind of use parts of it and splice in new sections of it. For example, this piece right here is for the right rear ABS sensor, and for our ABS system, we'll be able to reuse this pigtail. Now, these wires are going to the right-hand side marker, and you'll see I'm trying to save as much of these wiring pigtails as possible, just so it gives us a little extra room when we're splicing, and if we do make a mistake when we're splicing, we got all this extra wire, we can correct our mistakes. Now, Honda was pretty clever when they designed this. They made it so you can remove the entire taillight assembly without removing any of the bulbs. All you gotta do is disconnect these clips here. The wires going through this rear grommet here go straight to the rear license plate lights, and since there's 2 little lights back there, they give us 2 power wires and 2 ground wires. Once again, we save as much of the wiring as possible. Would you look at that? See that 3-way splice right there, guys? That is the proper way to splice an automotive harness. I've never used a splice like that. I'm used to using these guys, like I'm sure we're all familiar with. So this will be my first time using these open barrel splices, and you need a special crimp tool for it, but we got one. So this little guy right here is like a bus bar for all the ground wires. You got every ground from every light connected in this little plastic box, which then bolts to the chassis. So technically this is like a chassis ground. Now, on an aluminum chassis like the NSX, I'm not a big fan of using it as a chassis ground. We'll have our own ground distribution blocks. Reason being is a lot of times aluminum, although it doesn't look like it, it oxidizes really fast, especially when you have a steel bracket up against aluminum. There's something called galvanic corrosion, where dissimilar metals touching each other causes them both to corrode really fast. We're no longer going to need the trunk lock actuator or the power mast antenna. That's free weight reduction right there. That's another 2.5 pounds out of the car, which doesn't sound like much, but remove 40 little items like this, and that's 100 pounds out of the car, and that is a difference you can feel. So next, I think I'm gonna start removing the assemblies for the side markers, taillights, and license plate lights. That'll make it easier to clean up the wiring, get it all organized, and install our new Diode Dynamics LEDs. So these are really nice. They're made in America. I love the website because it includes the amp draw of all the different LEDs. And when you're powering the car off a PD16, and I'm gonna be working with 8 amp high current outputs for the lighting circuit, that kind of stuff is really important. So I did the math, it's all gonna work out. And in this box, I have LEDs for the entire car. They are not cheap, but they have a lifetime warranty, and they're gonna be a lot better than any Chinese LED that you buy, and you know, they start flickering after 6 months and going dim on you. So I think it's a smart option for this car, and it's really gonna future-proof the build. And that's really important to me since this is gonna be a race car, it's getting sent off to a customer, and we wanna keep it simple and reliable. Well guys, I got some bad news. I got all the unneeded wiring and harnessing off, and I started stripping back the wires to tie into my new harness, and I made a discovery that I do not like. So all the 194 bulbs, their wires look pretty good, and I think that's because they weather seal these really nicely. However, all the bulbs that have these open back designs, you get close to them, you could see the wires are starting to corrode, some worse than others. You know, it'll probably be easier to tell if I hold it next to a good wire. There we go. See, the one on the left is a nice shiny copper, while the one on the right is like green. So obviously we cannot be having corrosion like that on our harness. It's gonna be causing nothing but problems. So I went online, got on eBay, and I found brand new OEM taillight harnesses for the left and right side lights, as well as the license plate lights. So, and they're only like 70 bucks a piece. That ain't bad. It's better than me trying to source every single socket or repairing these sockets by soldering on new wires. So can't be mad at that. While I was on eBay, I picked up an MK60E5, which is an ABS module out of like a E92 BMW rear wheel drive. And those are really popular for doing standalone ABS conversions, which we're going to be doing on this car, since we're not going to be able to use the big chunky OEM ABS unit. It's probably fried anyway. So that's really good news. And what's cool about this whole harness thing is I was going to leave the socket connections as the last step in building this harness. I was planning on having basically the whole thing heat shrinked, loomed up and everything. And then obviously you want like a tiny bit of wire exposed where you connect to the pigtails. So this is really not that big of a roadblock. We're gonna continue making this harness. So here's everything I'm gonna be using today. Of course, we gotta start with our wiring schematic. I drew this up so it's easy for people to understand even if they don't have too much electrical experience. And I even kind of have it like pictographed so you can see the tail lights, the license plate lights, and the side markers. All this is gonna be going to one 6-pin Deutsch connector. That's this guy right here. We have our wires. These are all sized appropriately depending on the amperage running through them. So our ground wire that connects to every single load, every single light bulb is going to be 14 gauge. All of these guys are 16 gauge. We got our snippers here, we got our flush cutters and just regular dikes. Heat gun with a little adapter on here. This adapter helps with heat shrink sleeving. It kind of hits it from all angles at once, which gives you a nice even shrink. We have our wire strippers and our open barrel crimpers. You can tell they're open barrel because of the M-shaped dies on there. I got some tape here just to help hold the wires together. I use this for welding projects. I like it because it doesn't leave any residue. And then of course we got our classic electrical tape. This is kind of like a fabric tape, like Tessa tape. We got our open barrel crimps, and I had to do a little playing around since this is my first time using these guys. I had to do a little bit of adjustment to the clamping force on my crimp tool. But here's some scenarios that we're gonna run into when we're building the harness. So say we got two 16 gauge wires and a 14 gauge wires. Go up to our little diagram here, two 16 and a 14, we'll be using one of these, and we gotta put it into the 14 gauge slot. So that's kind of how I got that going on. We got some braided wire loom here. I got 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch. We got some water here to stay hydrated, otherwise my girlfriend will yell at me. And I have some heat shrink here. This is 3:1 shrink ratio, double wall adhesive lined, which makes a nice, solid, waterproof connection. So we're gonna start with the ground wire since it literally connects to every single light. It'll be a good wire to kind of build the rest of the loom upon. And all of it's gonna be going to a plug on the right-hand side of the taillight assembly. It's good to try to plan everything out. You know, that's how cars work. They always go as planned. And so we'll start by getting up close and personal and showing you a connection that I'm gonna be making between the center of the ground wire and our license plate lights. This part's pretty tedious and it makes you wish you had like 3 hands. There we go. You want to heat up these tubes until you can see the adhesive start seeping out the ends. But that's the whole process, guys. Just got to do that about 100 more times, wrap the whole thing in loom, and we're done. Now, while I don't have the new sockets and the new connectors necessary to connect everything, one thing I can hook up is our 6-pin plug at the end of the harness here. And we're gonna be using Deutsch Connectors like I mentioned earlier. This is my first experience with these, so let's see how it goes. Well, that wasn't bad at all. All right, I think I just stick these pins through the silicone membrane in the back. Huh, okay, there we go. I wasn't pushing it nearly far enough. Now that the pins are in the right place, I take this little plastic wedge, and I guess it locks them all together. Ouch. All right, yeah, that's simple enough. Looks pretty clean too. So I think I've done pretty much everything I could do today. Let's check out the new harness versus the old harness. So here's the two harnesses next to each other. As you can see, the new harness is much more simple. If you take a look at the plugs here, we got this compared to this. Just 6 wires, powers all these lights, plus the spoiler, which I'll talk about in a second. All right, it's been a second. These 2 wires at the end of the harness are gonna go to these 2 wires here, which run up into the 3rd brake light, which is actually already an LED, so we don't have to swap that one out. Now from the factory, they run it through into the engine bay and then out a little grommet right there. I'm gonna do a little wire tuck. I'm gonna drill a hole right here with a grommet, run it inside, and then connect these 2 wires to the 2 wires I just showed you. Everything else is nice and color-coded according to our diagram. So the driving lights are all yellow wires. You can see we got the 2 going back to the license plate lights. And we have the taillight assembly, so the white is reverse. We got those on either side. Then the next 3 are driving lights. You can see we got yellow wires for those. The outside 2 right here are brake lights, so we got the red wires for those. And then the left turn signal is orange, so we got the one going to this bulb, and we got the one that's gonna tie in to the left-hand side marker. And it's the same thing on the right side. More important than the color though, is as I made each connection, I got a little bit better, and now I'm very comfortable making these harnesses, and that's good because we got a lot of them to make. So now to address the engine in the room, I said in the last episode that the customer and I were planning on selling this thing as an assembly. Well, I contacted Science of Speed, and due to the saltwater damage, they were not interested in buying the whole assembly for $7,500, which I understand because it's basically gambling when you pick up something like this. You don't know what's gonna be good, what's gonna be bad. But I kept tearing deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and now I kind of know what's going to be good, what's going to be bad. And after the last video, I've had so many people contact me wanting different engine parts, not only engine, but interior parts as well. So I've decided I'm going to part it out. I'll just do it on the side in my own time. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and pull out the crank and the rods. Hopefully they all look good. We'll package them up, get them shipped out, and hopefully we have the new connectors for our taillight assemblies. We'll be able to finish up this harness, throw the taillights back on the car. I'll get some new taillight gaskets there as well, and we'll be able to hook it up to power and see if it all works. So thank you guys again for tuning in to Crafting Cars. Thanks for all the love on the latest build series, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.